This is part 3 of the iceberg image I've created. Go watch my other 2 parts if you haven't. I'm not going to waste time on the intro. But part 3, it's the tier that I usually skip to when it's covering the topics I'm very well associated with. Tier 3 is the parts where we're getting to the deeper cuts. These are the things you'll start learning about once you actually start reading the books or spend any time watching channels like mine here. Which, first up, we have servitors. Servitors are essentially the closest the Imperium can get to having AI helpers in the galaxy. Now, in the Imperium, AI is completely banned for stuff I'm gonna get into a little later. To make do, criminals are lobotomized and turned into robots, basically. They're heavily augmented and then reduced into automata who can just carry out basic tasks and functions based off of programming. The type of tasks a servitor performs is based off of, I guess, what type they are. They can be suited up for combat, more ship work and maintenance. They could do menial labor on a conveyor belt. So they could be a flying skull going around with like a vox caster on it, or they could literally just be a skull in a door that their only job is to open the door. This is what is waiting for you if you commit a crime in the Imperium, or if your great-great-great-grandpa commits a crime. In the Imperium, crime is punished generationally, as bureaucracy is real slow. So if, the original guy doesn't get punished for a crime, his descendants will. And on a similar vein, cherubs are essentially servitors that look like babies. Now, they aren't actually babies, they are instead vat-grown things that look like babies, because I guess some people like the flying baby aesthetic. Can't relate personally. And they also, again, serve a good number of roles, many of which are like delivering ammo and other little things, carrying incense, or even serving as like little psychic familiars. They just kind of do whatever. Slime Marbo is a fan favorite character from a beautiful era of 40k when it was a little goofier. So best way I can describe Slime Marbo is just picture Rambo. Like the movie Rambo, that's him. It's really not subtle. Also, Chuck Norris. All those old Chuck Norris memes are literally Slime Marbo. Like, all of them. There are a good couple floating around that you might have seen. Like, Slime Marbo once challenged a Warlord Titan to an arm wrestle, and he won. Slime Marbo killed 12 orcs with a grenade, and then it exploded. Slime Marbo sleeps with a pillow under his gun. Stuff like that. Slime Marbo basically is that 80s action character who is a one-man army, charges in and goes killing everyone. He's your Doom guy, your BJ Blazkowicz, he's your Rambo, like all those. That's all he is. He's really fun, honestly. A fun topic for sure. Gork and Mor, the twin orc gods, 2 very different characters, I promise you. They might seem very similar, but no, they're both proper orky in very different ways. Gork, brutal but cunning. Mork, cunning but brutal. Gork, he'll charge you head first and beat you over the head. Mork, he's cunning though. He'll wait till you're looking the other direction, then he'll clobber you over the head. Yeah, like their entire vibe is that they're obviously very similar, but they're very jealous about this fact. They are twins and they really don't like each other because orcs getting along, unheard of, impossible. And they also show up to orc fights, listening in to their followers, see how they're doing. And oh my god, if they hear an orc pray to the other god. Oh boy, if Gork hears someone praying to Mork, it's not going well. He is going to be pissed. Which, this aspect is also a reason why Gazgul being the prophet of Gork and Mork is such a big deal. This is unheard of, because they don't get along, so them to put their stock into one fucking guy, it's a big deal. In a similar vein to the revival of Gilman, the Return of the Lion is the return of the Primarch, Lionel Johnson, the Primarch of the Dark Angels, where after a long-ass sleep from being injured by traitor Luther, he is now awake and back and kicking in current 40k, so where he is an Imperium Nihilus, where he hasn't really reconvened with the rest of the Imperium, and mainly he hasn't recontacted Gilman yet. Largely, he made his debut in the Arcs of Omen storyline, where he reappeared when Demon Primarch Angron showed up, to where they fought, and he destroyed Angron, banished him back to the warp, by decapitating Angron with the Shield of the Emperor. A very cool fight scene. You can criticize the Arcs of Omen storyline all you want. Trust me, there are some issues with it. this fight is pretty fucking cool though. Though the Lion is still out and about doing his own thing, roughly. He hasn't really made any major moves for the Imperium, though largely he's going around talking to the rest of the Fallen for the Dark Angels, which, for those who don't know, the Fallen, when it comes to the Dark Angels, are those forces who went against the Dark Angels way back in the day, those that betrayed the Lion and the Imperium during the Horus Heresy, to where now, with the Lion, he's provided all of them their proper life alerts, so now they can get back up, and they're now known as the Risen, at least for those that are not Chaos Corrupted. The Black Rage and the Red Thirst is the main flaw for the Blood Angels chapter. To hit the simpler concept right out of the park first, the Red Thirst is the part that makes the Blood Angels vampires. They thirst for blood. This is a thing they have to control, because on one hand, they can just partake of a little bit of blood, like a nice little chalice, nice little gold cup, all fancy like they like to be, or they can be absolutely bloodthirsty vampires where all they think about is blood and then they have to be locked away forever. Not a good fate. And then the Black Rage is a little more complicated, where the Black Rage is the effect of the psychic reverberation of Sanguinius dying, where Sanguinius getting killed by Horus sent out a shockwave throughout the entire Legion, to where sometimes, in moments of pure stress and other random circumstances, a Blood Angel can be thrown into a weird psychosis where they believe they are Sanguinius during the Siege of Terra. Now, I see a lot of people claim that this is a situation where they see that they are Sanguinius fighting Horus, like they see all their enemies as Horus. This is not true. They see them as Sanguinius in Terra, so they just see like chaos forces. But this process throws them into an absolute battle psychosis where they see literally everyone as those traitor forces, and they will fight literally everything until they die, because this thing is unreversible. And as such, the best situation that they can be put into is put into these specific like battle companies where they are then thrown into battle hoping that they're going to die in combat honorably, because they really don't want to just put them down. That's really dishonorable. That is, of course, unless you're Mephiston, who has actually gotten out of the Black Rage twice, which is pretty nuts, not gonna lie. And we have Traon the Infinite, a fan favorite character, myself included. He's my favorite character in this. Traon is a Necron archaeologist in the biggest air quotes I could possibly give. Now, with his British accent and his absolute rampant kleptomania, you could obviously mistake him for the Great British Museum, which is a very common mistake, don't get me wrong. Traon is fantastic though, unlike the British Museum, in the fact that he's such a goofy fucking character. I love him so much. There's a great book of him with The Infinite and the Divine where it really encapsulates what makes him such a fun character. Like every Necron, he's goofy, but it is covering up an absolute pit of sadness and sorrow, covering up the fact he steals all these artifacts and preserves these memories because he is really sad he doesn't remember what it feels like to be flesh. But primarily, Traon is a collector of moments, people, and really cool artifacts, a lot of which he will deploy when he really needs to. Like in certain battles that he takes part in, where he pulls out these like Tesseract labyrinths that he throws out like Pokeballs containing armies that he was going to put on display, but might serve better in this battle where he doesn't really want to die. Which also he can't die. Traon the Infinite is because he set up some tech that every time he dies, quote unquote, his consciousness just jumps to the nearest Necron where he overwrites them and takes over their body, which is hilarious and proper dickish. The Men of Iron. So you know how every sci-fi universe has a robot uprising somewhere? This is it, and the Men of Iron is the word for said robots. Robots that are self-aware and have AI, or as they'd later be known, Abominable Intelligence, which I'll get into later. So this situation in the whole like part of this timeline, it takes place like during the Dark Age humanity. I will be real, it genuinely doesn't matter. This has like little to no bearing on like what you encounter in 40k. So it gets streamlined over for a very good reason. So the actual battle between humanity and the Men of Iron is considered to be such a horrific battle that it makes the Horus Heresy look like a petty little feud in comparison. It was honestly a horrific battle with all the things it kind of describes, which it's also very vague. It just, you know, says it's horrible and bloody. And it was a battle so bad that, you know, all AI, all robots were dismantled and destroyed, which then built the legacy that would become banning all AI completely unallowed in humanity, to which luckily none of the Men of Iron survived. Or did they? Turns out there actually is one of the Men of Iron still alive. This guy. He even has a mini, which is kind of fun. Also, fun little tidbit about him, he actually says he's met the Omnissiah, like the real Omnissiah, as in not the Emperor, which he then goes on to say that he thinks the Mechanicus would be very disappointed if they met the real one. Which then, going right off of this, the Abominable Intelligence is the word for AI. Just, you know, same abbreviation, you know? AI is dangerous, AI is outlawed, so whatever. Fun thing though, there definitely is still some AI in the Imperium, mainly Belisarius Cawl, who has a version of himself that he gave to Guilliman, Cawl Minor, who is a version of him to where if Guilliman has any questions, he can just ask this AI version of Cawl, and he'll answer. Or he has a AI construct of Guilliman to where he can perfectly lab out his arguments so we can get Guilliman to do what he wants. What a legend. I love Cawl. The Alpha Legion are loyalists is a really popular theory with a lot of evidence backing it up, and it's really heavily hinted at. So mainly the Alpha Legion are the mainly subterfuge, espionage, sneaky legion of Chaos Marines, to where they kind of jump around in loyalty. Sometimes they are 100% chaos aligned, they use demons, they worship the gods, full on like that. Other times, they are actively on their own side, saying as such that they are playing on a neutral ground. Other times, saying that they are working for the Imperium. There's one character noting that he believes that his job is to test the Imperium for greater enemies that mankind must face one day. So who knows? But the main bit that this actually comes down to is an event in the Horus Heresy, where Alpharius and Omegon dealt with a Xenos group known as the Cabal, where the Cabal conspired to deal with chaos through the Horus Heresy. Mainly, they went and spoke to Alpharius to give him a proper deal. This deal was based on a prophecy that there were two outcomes of the Horus Heresy. Mainly, that Horus would win and the galaxy would be taken over by chaos. But then chaos would be taken over by infighting to where humanity would be completely wiped out, but chaos would eat itself and extinguish, making every other group in the galaxy free from its reign. And on the other hand, the Imperium would win, but chaos would still be pretty strong, leading to the eventual slow death of everything in the universe. The key defining bit was who Alpharius allied himself with, where the Cabal said if Alpharius allied himself with the Emperor or Horus, that would dictate which outcome it went with. And as this theory goes, Alpharius allied himself with Horus, but we got the Imperium victory option. Now, I also think that this theory comes from a misinterpretation of what this scene is. Mainly the fact that the Cabal are fucking morons, and that they have some Farseers, they have some people who see in the future, but Eldrad, the absolute best Farseer in the galaxy, said to their faces that this plan is stupid and it's not going to work. And then also in the fact that the Cabal is very, very strongly written to be under no uncertain terms in all circumstances. Their only goal is to get rid of chaos. They do not care about any of the cost to get there. Humanity, they're completely willing to get rid of. So I think that the only reason they went with Alpharius is because Alpharius is the only Primarch that would have listened to them in the first place. The Hive Mind is, on the surface, pretty simple, just in the fact that, oh yeah, it's just, the thing that controls the Tyranids. But there's a bit more when it comes to this. So the Tyranids are, a Gestalt consciousness creature. So every single bug is like its own little node that the more bugs that are in the general area, the smarter it is, because the more connected is the Hive Mind. The main thing, though, is we don't really know what the Hive Mind is. There's a lot going on in the fact that we know the Hive Mind has a personality, because as much as it's implied to be like raw hunger and the hunger for biomass, it also has been building up spite and anger and a grudge, mainly to the Blood Angels, because oh my god, it'll go out of its way to murder the Blood Angels. Other than that, it has a really intelligent mind for perfect adaptation, to where it'll build up and remember opponents to then adapt on the fly to better murder them. It's making it a very dangerous thing, but to this point, we just don't know what the Hive Mind is and what it's fully capable of, to where it could just be sourced from outside our galaxy, for all we know. But also, we know that you can tap into the Hive Mind. It is a psychic force of some kind, where all the psykers that have tried to tap into the Hive Mind have died horribly, except for one guy, a certain Ultramarine psyker, who tapped in for only like 9 seconds or something, and his mind is forever scarred with the Hive Mind, and all he heard was psychic, hungry screaming. And even then, this is an interesting fact that it's a psychic force in some way, because the Hive Mind also casts a shadow over the warp that blocks it. It blocks the warp, blocks psychic communication in all aspects. The Legion of the Damned is, I think, one of the more popular successor chapters. The Legion of the Damned are 2 possibilities. The first option, which I think is way cooler, is they are Ghost Rider Space Marines, and the fact they are the ghosts of Space Marines, either died recently or died back on Esteban 3 and 5, coming back to wage war against the enemies of mankind when humanity needs them most, kills them with ghost weapons, flaming bullets, and then disappears once the enemy is laid slain. Or the psychic reverberations built up from psykers believing that their brothers deserve a second chance. Or they are the remnants of a bunch of chapters that went lost in the warp for whatever reason. This second option is a bit more true, sadly. I actually have a video on this of, other successor chapters, so I give more detail on the Legion of the Damned in this video, if you want to hear more. The Missing Primarchs is something that is widely discussed. Now, the Emperor built 20 Primarchs back in the day, but we only talk about 18. This is because 2 of the Primarchs did something so horrific, so awful, so reprehensible, their identity had to be completely scrubbed from the record. No mention of them. Something so bad that Horus, his betrayal, pales in comparison. What did they do? No one knows. And we will never know. That's kind of the point. Now, there's a lot of misinformation that goes around about the Primarchs. And a lot of fan theories. A lot of them. And I'll be real, a lot of it, I'm sorry, is untrue. Because, listen, the point of these Primarchs is the fact it is an intentional mystery. At the time they were written, the Missing Primarchs, the point that was being written is that it is a reference to the missing Roman legions at the time, in a time in an empire that was very highly bureaucratic, very highly detailed, just vanished during wartime, making fun of the Imperium for being so absolutely dogmatic that even the Primarchs weren't safe from their dogmatic propaganda machine, or just having a fun mystery written, as Rick Priestley talked about, during a setting that he did not think was going to be explored at all when it was written, way back in the 80s. And other than that, I have a video on Missing Primarchs as well. So if you want to hear more, I compile literally all of the information we have on the Missing Primarchs in this video. The Perpetuals, a controversial topic. Now, they're what they kind of say on the tin, in the fact that they are immortal humans. As in, like, you shoot a Perpetual, they'll, the bullet will pop out and they'll heal. You cut off the head and, like, burn the body, the head will just grow a new body. You can't kill them, they will always come back. Now, they can be sourced from multiple ways, mainly either from natural methods, like they're just born that way, or you can artificially create one. Like, for example, the Emperor is a natural Perpetual, Homo Superior, as they're called as such because they're viewed as, like, the maximum step that humans can evolve to, and they also hoped that they could make the rest of humanity ascend to that step as well. And then you also have Artificial, who, like Vulcan and John Grammaticus, they were ascended to become Perpetuals by other parties. Where the controversial part of the Perpetuals is the fact that this is a tag that a lot of characters were not written to be Perpetuals. Like, for example, Vulcan, he was not written to be a Perpetual. I think that's lame. I'm not a fan of that. In the same way I don't like the Living Saint thing, because I really don't like the idea of taking a cool character who's really dope and then just slapping a thing on it and being like, yeah, by the way, they were this supernatural thing the whole time. I find that really cheap because I like the indomitable spirit of the human will and strength and they're just naturally this cool and tanky, and now it's just, nah, they were magic. It's fucking boring. I think John Grammaticus, there's a lot of people who hate John Grammaticus. As someone who's only read Legion, I like him. I think he's a fun character in the fact he's written to be immortal, and it's very telling that he's immortal. And I like that. I think that's cool, and if someone's written to be immortal, it's fine. Then we got the Harad. The Harad are a very scary Xenos race. I have a video on them, by the way, if you want more detail. But the Harad are probably the worst Xenos to fight. A species that is so bad, it literally turned one of the Primarchs and his Legion traitor. Perturabo, his entire shit is because of them. So the Harad, their entire thing is they extrude this aura, this temporal field, to where just everything around them ages. To where maybe you're fighting the Harad, and then as you're swinging, as you're shooting, you know, your skin starts to loosen and sag as you start to age, until eventually you age to death around them. Also, they secrete poison and stuff. They're capable of a lot of horrific shit, and they are really rough to fight because they move in packs, and the more of them that are around, the stronger the field gets, and it gets really bad. This is incredibly hard to fight if you're a Space Marine, and I mean this mentally, because Space Marines, you're told your entire life that you are an ageless, perfect creation, and then you're fighting a creature that doesn't make you ageless anymore, and now you're aging, and you have to mentally deal with that. That is rough. So, lastly, a word I am not going to be able to sell because I cannot do an orc accent to save my life, the Wa. There are a few possible meanings for this. I will hit them in order of fun. First up, it is the orc war cry. This is what they scream as they charge you with a big axe or a big saw. Second, this is the name of their giant military campaigns, named as such because this is what happens when an orc, just out of nowhere, this is kind of how it starts, kind of just suddenly gets really amped up by the powers of Gork and Mor, to where they just start screaming, wah, like freaking out, to where the other orcs start getting amped up, start screaming too, to where now it's a giant snowball effect. This orc clan gets all built up and they start running out. The other orcs around go, oh shit, let's go. They start screaming as well, and it's a giant snowball effect. That is how an orc wasp starts. And it carries on until they lose interest or enough of them die that it kind of peters out. And then lastly, this is the name of the orc psychic field, the orc groupthink that everyone loves to talk about. This manifests in a lot of different ways, mainly in the fact of orc colors, where, you know, red makes you go faster, all that. And also the fact that this is the reason orc tech functions, because this is how their cars work. Because look at this truck and tell me, like, it would function. It wouldn't, okay? It would not. They believe it does because the mech boy, he says it does. And everyone's like, I trust the mech boy. And as well, I am sad to be the bearer of bad news. A lot of people put a lot more stock into this than they should. It is not as powerful as a lot of people believe it to be. It is not as powerful as if you give a lead pipe to an orc and absolutely just go out of your way, you gaslight this orc to shit and tell them this is a gun. It'll shoot bullets, make him fully believe it's a gun. It's not gonna work. He doesn't believe that. It's not that powerful. It doesn't work like that. Even if you convince an entire orc clan, it doesn't work like that. On the other hand, I'm also sad to say most of those stories, those really popular stories, some of them I cannot verify if they're true. Like the story of the orcs out in space who realize that they need helmets to breathe in space. The really fun I'm a Tank story, as popularized by Adeptus Ridiculous. Those are fan stories. They're not true, but I don't think it's a bad thing, to be honest. I see people shit on the fact like these specific parts are getting popularized. I don't think it's a bad thing that these are spreading because they get people into the hobby and they get more people enjoying the fun nerdy shit that we do, and they explain orcs in a fun way. Because I guess what really matters is that, you know, people get into orcs and we have the fun bits of orcs. And we have all the fun orc running jokes because, I don't know, it's fun. Orcs are the fun faction. They should have all of this goofy stuff around them. Is it true? No, not really. When people delve actually deep into what is canon, what is real for 40k, they can deal with that. If you're just on the surface level, on the upper two levels of an iceberg, I don't think it really matters. But yeah, I guess see you next part.